Quite a story, right? And this is perfect for this Sunday of peace, this second Sunday in Advent, prophets of the Most High. Especially in this season of preparation, not just for the birth of Christ, but for our own backyard birthing or moving out beyond our backyard. This has been a fantastic season of physical and emotional and spiritual growth for our church. And as we prepare to take those first steps outside the backyard fence, in just a little while, we pause now to review some of the basics of ministry out there. Last week, if you weren't here, we discussed the seeming bleakness of the world. Though it might seem very dark, God is indeed already at work. Amazing, right? That God can work without us. However, we need to be very intentional in looking for signs of God at work, finding glimpses of hope and promise, and then pointing others toward that light. Amen?
Amen.
We practiced intentionality by thinking about and then writing down a person or place or situation where we see God working in a dark world, or where we plan to bring God's hope. Symbolically, we did it and confirmed it through the hanging of these ideas on this branch, transforming the neighborhood, if you will. Look, he said. This week's story of Zechariah teaches us the next step of what we have to do. And that is when we walk into the neighborhood, we listen. Think about it. Zechariah is going about his business. He's doing his ministry inside the temple, in the most sacred place in the temple. He's honored to do so. Clearly, he is in the zone. And you know what I mean by in the zone, right? When you're in the middle of great worship, right? Everything kind of tunes out, and you're focusing on how great worship is, and how great you worship, and how great thou art, and you get the picture, right? But in the middle of all of this ceremony, he's startled out of his religious stupor by a voice, a messenger of God, and his first act of listening has begun. Don't be afraid, says the angel. And she goes on to tell Zechariah all that will happen. Elizabeth, his old wife, is going to have a child, and they should name that child John. And John will help a lot of people turn back to God. Now, like you or I would most likely do, I can imagine, Zechariah starts rattling off a list of what the angel just told him, by all earthly accounts, just can't happen. What? He says, how? Can't be. Look at me. Look at her. Can't do it. Impossible. And the angel in that moment gives Zechariah a gift. Truth be told, I kind of envy once in a while. She gave Zechariah the gift of silence. From now on, Zechariah would stop talking, stop building a case for why it can't happen, and listen instead to what God is saying. I always wonder, what is it that Zechariah heard in the silence? How can we learn through his experience? And I came up with a couple of things. The first thing I think Zechariah heard was the voice of the angel. She made him mute, and all of a sudden she continued, reiterating God's plan. You will be silent and unable to speak until the child is born, for my words will certainly be fulfilled at the proper time, she says. So, in other words, this is going to happen. God doesn't break promises. And I'm wondering, what was it that you wrote down last week? What was it that you decided to look for last week? Because since then, I would guess, if I was a betting woman, I would guess that you had found a half dozen reasons why what you wrote down probably won't work. At the very least, should you have begun thinking about it, at least you've asked the questions. What did I write that down for? How can I possibly take that on? It's too big. Can't be. I don't see any way that this can change. Look at me. I'm not qualified in any way, shape, or form to do this work. Look at her. Everyone knows this situation is beyond hope. Can't do it. Impossible. Sound familiar? Listen. There is no situation out there that is out of God's reach. There is nothing God can't do. Believe it or not, Zechariah, the plan will be fulfilled. So shut up for 1 minute. Stop telling God why the plan won't work and listen instead to what God is saying. Now the next thing Zechariah heard when the angel finally stopped talking was the sound of the crowd. Remember, this great multitude was praying outside the temple. They were gathered, and as Zechariah walked out into the temple yard, unable to add his own voice, the sounds of the people must have sounded overwhelming. It's quite new, you know, when we allow ourselves just to listen to the sounds around us without interjecting us into the mix. Interjecting our opinions or our judgments or our power or our privilege. Where do we tune our ears? How do we discern one voice in the crowd from another? And as Zechariah continued to listen, some voices became louder and more pronounced. What's happening to you, Zechariah? Why aren't you speaking? What did you see? What are you doing? And Zechariah, unable to answer, just gestures. They assume he must have seen a vision. My friends, when we stop talking long enough to hear the sounds of the crowd without interjecting us, opinion, judgment, power, privilege, trust me on this, people are going to wonder, what the heck is wrong with you? What is going on? Because most of us, with very few exceptions, have something to say about everyone and everything. Amen? It's normal. But spouting off about this or that and everything that we are sure about stops us from hearing the other side or sides, because there's always more than two sides, right? Many of us stopped listening to any voices that do not resemble our own decades ago. We've lost track of what the other is actually saying or is really about, because the only information that we gather is from our side. What if we just stopped and listened for a while? What voice might we hear that needs our attention? The next sound Zechariah heard was the sound of, and the voice of his wife, old Elizabeth. Who in here has been married a long time? So you get it, right? We stopped listening to our spouses years ago. And for those without a long-time life partner, think about the voices that you've taken into your everyday life that are as familiar to you as your own voice. A voice that is seemingly always there. A parent, a friend, a co-worker, a newscaster, an author. Zechariah has been with his wife Elizabeth so long that he thinks he has heard it all. He thinks he knows her so well that there is nothing left to learn. They had grown old together. And sadly, sometimes that means that we stop looking for the growth in that other person. We get in the habit, even with the people closest to us, to thinking that we can predict their every move. don't. Why don't we stop to take into account that God is working in them? How kind the Lord is, Elizabeth says. God has taken away my disgrace at not being able to have children. Disgrace. I wonder what God has done in the lives of the people closest to us, and when is the last time that we've stayed silent enough to ask them? I can only imagine what life must have been like for Zechariah over those months and months of listening. No doubt Elizabeth enjoyed it, amen? But when we think about the people he interacted with on a daily basis, what must they have thought? I expect he learned a lot about himself and how people perceived him. Here is a priest, someone who always has something to say, the answer person. Now, just taking the time, finally, for once, just to hear from others. Not forcing his agenda, but allowing others to speak to him about their needs, their desires, their dreams, without saying a word back. What would it be like for us, First Baptist, when we move out of the backyard, if instead of trying to bring our brand of Christianity into the neighborhood that we think it so badly needs, we just listen to our neighbors once in a while? That we listen to what the neighborhood thinks it needs. What is their perception of the church? Do you know? What is their perception of us, First Baptist? What does our church, or could our church, mean to the community, or stand for in the community? What do the people need and want from this church? And how can we help the people in practical ways that will bring them into a better life? This gift that Zechariah is given is one that all of us can embrace, should embrace. Next week we'll be talking about when and how and what to speak, but before we leave Zechariah's silence, let me tell you what Zechariah said after all of those months when he finally did speak. You jump down to verse 57, it says this. When it was time for Elizabeth's baby to be born, she gave birth to a son. Big surprise, right? When her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had been merciful to her, everyone rejoiced with her. Now, as an aside, Zechariah is still not speaking. Still not speaking when his baby was born, and he rejoiced. What does that look like? How do we celebrate something so miraculous in silence? Go back to the text. When the baby was 8 years old, all the relatives and friends came for the circumcision ceremony. They wanted to name him Zechariah, after his father, but Elizabeth said, no, his name is John. What? They exclaimed, there's no one in your whole family by that name. So they used gestures to ask the baby's father what they wanted to name him. Interesting that now the crowd is speaking Zechariah's language. Zechariah motions to the writing tablet, and to everyone's surprise, he writes, his name is John. Instantly, Zechariah can speak again, and he began praising God. His very first words were words of praise. What happened? In Zechariah, in writing the name John, affirmed all that the angel had said, affirmed God's plan, affirmed, yes, God was big enough to bring about a brand new thing. Zechariah, through listening, worked past the what, how, can it be, look at me, look at her stuff. And his first spoken words were words of praise about a God who can do the impossible. Praise God, who is patient to teach us despite ourselves. Praise the God who never breaks here's a promise. Praise the God of salvation and newness. Because of God's tender mercy, the morning light from heaven is about to break upon us, and to give light to all who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, and to guide us in the paths of peace. And do you know what happened next, my beloved congregation of prophets? Awe fell upon the whole neighborhood, and the news of what has happened spread throughout the land. Everyone who heard about it reflected. Everyone who heard about it reflected. For the hand of God was surely upon them in a special way. Zechariah, today, we are called to listen. Just listen. It's so hard in this world where there is a cacophony of voices trying to get into our spirits. We're not called to interject anything but God's voice. We can't hear as long as we're speaking. Today I'm going to ask Howard to come and play a song for you. It's about what we're talking about today, peace. I don't want you to do anything during this reflection. I don't want you to try to think about anything. There is no agenda. There's no what I'm supposed to be doing. It's simply listening and letting God speak to your hearts and your spirits. May God bless us each as we go into this time of prayer. Just listen.
So far down the road of my own mistakes, in the hope you could hear me pray, oh Lord, keep me in your reach. How I've longed through these wasted years to outrun all the pain and fear, turn to stone from my uncried tears. Oh, now it's your grace I see. Love won't compromise. It's a gift. It's a sacrifice, my soul renewed, my heart released. In you I find my peace. Oh, wondrous child, of whom the angels sing, know my joy, feel my suffering, shining star, make this love you bring so bright that I believe that my way will not be lost from now on. my spirit